So I've just been sitting here watching a show that is called Justice in America. This is basically Justice Malala in America, standing in front of an American flag, talking about South African issues. Now, in the beginning, I was wondering, why would Justice be talking about South African issues in front of an American flag on a show that is called Justice in America? Then all of a sudden it hit me. People like Justice Malala, Given Mukari, Ridi Tlabi, and a lot of these people of color that are working for white monopoly media are basically telling us that we as black people have to continue to allow ourselves to be slaves for European capital, American capital, and allow the exploitation of our resources in the name of progress. This is confirmed by what it is that Justice said, because Justice went on to say that the reason why South Africa is not creating jobs, reason why we're heading for another credit downgrade, and the reason why it is that the South African economy is not growing is because there is no policy and there's no policy certainty in South Africa. He says that the ANC is not giving policy certainty because it is divided into two factions. One faction that is full of honest leaders that are progressive, who want to grow South Africa, get more investment into the country, and that consists of the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa, and another faction that is made up of people like Ace, who want to loot the country, who are corrupt, and they serve the interests of state capture in the form of black economic transformation. Now, this is the narrative that we've grown to learn in South Africa. The narrative that says that wherever white interests are in the forefront, that is progressive for black people. Wherever there's white interests, wherever white people are involved, there is honesty, integrity, hence Cyril Ramaphosa is associated with that. And whenever there's black interests, there is corruption and destruction of the country. What I find ironic about that particular narrative is the fact that South Africa has been in white hands ever since the very first white people came and colonized this country in 1654. So basically, we can basically say that the South African economy has been in white hands for 340 years and only 24 years under black management. But what is ironic about the 340 years is that these are years in which black people have been impoverished. South Africa itself has been impoverished to the extent that even the Boers had to go to war against the English because the English were looting South Africa instead of building South Africa. So when I hear people associating progress and whiteness, I get confused because we've not had progress in the past 340 years in which only white investment, white governance has been ruling this country. But instead, we've had a crime against humanity that was perpetuated by these whites, a crime against humanity that dispossessed black people of their land and resources, and a crime against humanity in which South Africa has been stripped of over $10 trillion in resources and wealth that have found their way to the European markets and the Anglo-Americans and not the South Africans. In this country that has given 54% of the world's gold, $4.5 trillion of its gold, has given 78% of the world's platinum, given more than 38% of the world's diamonds, we continue to have 6 million of its people living in shacks because the crime against humanity that was perpetrated by white South Africans impoverished black South Africans and made billionaires of the Rothschild, the Rockefellers in America and in Britain. And so today, when black South Africans continue to advance the narrative, when white South Africans continue to advance the narrative that whiteness is associated with truth, honesty, and progress, and blackness is associated with corruption, it can only mean one thing. It can only mean that when we, in the name of reconciliation, decided to allow white people to keep their ill-gotten gains, their unjust enrichment, we allowed the legalization of a crime. And when we allowed the legalization of the crime of theft and dispossession, we automatically illegalized and criminalized black people for seeking restitution, for seeking repossession, and for seeking emancipation for that which they lost during the crime of apartheid. We have a legitimacy issue in South Africa. We have a crisis where the lie has been made a truth and the truth has been made the lie. And this illegitimacy is a crime in its own respect, because South Africa has continued to allow the criminals, white South Africans, and they are all criminals because they've been beneficiaries of apartheid, they've been accomplices of apartheid, they've been the perpetrators of the crime of apartheid. When we allowed them to continue to make the laws of South Africa, when we allowed them to be the executives in the banks, the executives in the law firms, the executives in the auditing firms, we allowed criminals to continue to perpetuate their crime in order to protect their ill-gotten gains. Until South Africans correct this injustice, until South Africans correct this crime that is continuously perpetuated, and until South Africans allow justice to be served by allowing black people to seek restitution, to seek restoration, to seek repossession of what it is that was stolen from them, crime will always be good and legality will always be bad in this country. It means that white will always be just and black will be always unjust in this country until we fix this illegitimacy and this legitimacy crisis that we've got in South Africa. This is why the Justice Malalas of this world can proclaim that people that have disempowered, impoverished, raped, pillaged, and instituted genocide on people for 365 years are just, while criminalizing black people for wanting restitution and the correction of the crime that was perpetuated against them, that sees white people continue to enslave black people because they control the capital legally after stealing it in a crime that was called apartheid.